$200,000 for one night. That's what he said, those exact words, like they were nothing, like he was offering me a sandwich or a lift downtown. For a second, my mind just froze, completely blank, like I'd been unplugged from reality. I stood there in the hallway, water dripping down my skin, clutching my towel so tight my knuckles hurt, as if it was the only thing anchoring me to the world. Adam, my stepdad, was right there, a few feet away, his eyes fixed on me with this unnerving mixture of certainty and pleading. I could see in his face that he'd rehearsed this, probably in the mirror, over and over. He looked so sure I'd say yes, so confident. And yet behind it all, there was a glimmer of something almost desperate, as if this was his last shot at something he couldn't even name. I couldn't find words at first. My throat closed up, my brain lagged behind my body. When I finally managed to speak, it came out as a strangled, furious yell, raw emotion, disbelief, disgust, all tangled up and surging out of me uncontrollably. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I shouted, stumbling backwards, putting as much space between us as I could, as if distance would make what just happened less real. "My name is Michelle. I'm 33 years old now, married, 2 kids, and a whole lifetime away from the woman I was in that suffocating hallway. At 25, I was barely out of college, weighed down by student loans, scraping by as a brand new assistant professor at a local community college. My father had left when I was still a teenager, moved halfway around the world and just disappeared, like a magician's final trick. My mother, Julia, tried to fill the emptiness by marrying Adam when I was 20. She seemed to love him, or at least she tried hard enough to convince herself. Adam was wealthy, flashy, always ready to spend his money on whatever she wanted. My mom was a few years older than him, but that never seemed to bother either of them. For me, though, Adam had always been a discomfort, a presence I tolerated only for my mother's sake. It's strange how you can share a house with someone and feel like strangers. Or worse, like you're in a room with a wild animal you can never turn your back on. It all unraveled that one suffocating summer afternoon. I'd decided to visit my mom's place for the weekend. A rare occurrence since we'd never been close, and being around her always left me raw and exhausted. Ever since my twin sister died as a child, there had been an unspoken chasm between us that nothing seemed to bridge. But money was tight and I was desperate. A couple of days in her house meant a few saved meals and maybe, if I was lucky, a rare, honest conversation. Hope can be such a cruel thing. I remember that day so clearly. I'd gone running, the sun beating down on me, sweat soaking through my clothes. When I got back, the house was silent and still. A note on the counter said my mom was out. Adam had gone to get groceries. It felt like I had the place to myself, so I let my guard down. I headed straight for the shower, not bothering to grab clothes. Why would I? I thought I was alone, surrounded by the familiar, safe walls of my mother's home. After my shower, wrapped in nothing but a damp towel, I walked down the hall to the bedroom where my clothes were. I didn't even consider that someone might come back early. That's the thing about feeling safe. You never see the danger coming until it's too late. As I rounded the corner, I saw him, Adam, standing in the hallway blocking my path. My heart lurched, panic rising up like bile. He was staring at me, eyes roving in a way that instantly made my skin crawl. For a split second, I thought maybe I'd surprised him, or he'd walked in by accident. But then he smiled. Not a warm or apologetic smile, but something colder, calculating. The smile of a man who's already decided what's about to happen. He took a step closer and my body tensed. "You're beautiful, you know that?" he said, voice low and deliberate, like he was testing to see how far I'd let him go. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was rooted to the spot, paralyzed by a tidal wave of confusion and fear. Then he said it, his voice calm and almost bored, like he was pitching a business deal. $200,000 for one night. Time seemed to warp. The hallway felt smaller, the air thicker. My mind raced for an explanation. Maybe I'd misheard him. Maybe this was some awful joke. But as I looked at him, I saw nothing but certainty in his face. He meant every word. He was offering to buy me, to turn me into a transaction. And he didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. I managed to choke out, "What the hell did you just say?" My voice sounded far away, brittle and unfamiliar. Adam didn't even blink. He just shrugged, that disgusting smirk never leaving his face. "You heard me," he said, casual as anything. "Think about it, Michelle. $200,000. You could pay off your debts, start over. No one would have to know. Hearing him say those words so plainly made something inside me snap. Shame, fury, humiliation, all roared to the surface. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my towel. Are you insane? I screamed at him, backing away like he was some kind of wild animal. What kind of person do you think I am? He didn't flinch. His expression barely changed, except now he looked slightly annoyed, like I was inconveniencing him, like I was the one being unreasonable. Calm down, he said, his voice maddeningly even. It's just an offer. No need to make a big deal out of it. A big deal? My own stepdad, standing in the hallway of my childhood home, trying to buy a night with me, and acting like I was being dramatic. The sheer audacity of it made me want to scream, to throw something, to tear down the walls just to make it stop. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned and fled to the bedroom, slamming the door and locking it behind me. I collapsed against the door, my breath coming in sharp, shallow gasps. My heart felt like it might explode. I was trapped, not just in that tiny room, but in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The house, which was supposed to be a place of refuge, suddenly felt alien and unsafe. My mind spun with 1,000 questions. Was there anything I could do? Should I call the police? Tell my mom? But the truth was I had no one to turn to. My mother had never believed me about anything serious. She always found a way to twist things, to make my pain my fault. I could already hear her voice cold and dismissive. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand? Maybe you led him on. The thought made me feel even smaller, more alone. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees to my chest, fighting back tears. Wave after wave of shame and anger crashed over me. I wanted to scream at the world, to wipe away the memory of Adam's voice, that awful smirk. But mostly, I just wanted to disappear, to be anywhere but there. Minutes crawled by, each one heavier than the last. The walls seemed to close in, the silence pressing on me until I thought I might burst. That moment, sitting on the cold floor, shaking, with no one to call and nowhere to go, was the loneliest I have ever felt. It was the moment I realized that no matter how old you are, some wounds never really heal. And sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. The world I knew had cracked, and I was left on the other side, trying desperately to find my way back to myself. Time dragged on with unbearable slowness as I sat alone in my room, every second stretching out until it felt like the night might never end. I barely breathed, frozen in place, listening to the faint hum of the TV leaking in through the thin walls. Adam's way of pretending everything was normal, as if nothing had shattered between us just moments before. The audacity of him, lounging out there, flipping channels, acting like my world hadn't just been turned upside down, made me sick to my stomach. It was like he'd rehearsed this, like he knew how to become invisible to consequence. Finally, the front door creaked open, and my mother's voice glided in, light as ever, laced with that same breezy, distracted tone she always had when she got home late. For a fleeting instant, relief washed over me. She was home, she'd fix it, she'd see what was wrong. But just as quickly, that hope collapsed under a wave of dread. I realized I had no idea what to say, or even if she'd be willing to hear it. Would she be the mother I needed? Or would she just brush me off like I was being dramatic? My heart pounded as I forced myself out of my room, hands slippery with sweat, feeling like a ghost in my own house. There she was, already halfway into the kitchen, dropping her purse on the counter, moving through her routine like nothing was out of place. Adam sprawled on the couch, so at ease it was infuriating. He gave me a sideways glance, calm, unreadable, almost daring me to say something. My stomach twisted, but I swallowed hard and made myself speak. Mom, I need to talk to you. Alone, I managed, my voice barely steady. She turned, eyebrows drawn in annoyance, not concern. What's wrong? She said, her tone clipped. Impatience, not warmth. I glanced at Adam, who watched us with a detached curiosity, like he was watching a scene play out in a show he'd already seen. I jerked my head toward the kitchen, trying to keep my voice from cracking. Can we talk in private? Please. She exhaled, exasperated, but followed me anyway. I leaned against the counter, hands shaking as I tried to find the right words. My whole body felt like it was buzzing with fear and anger. Mom, I began, my voice trembling around the edges. Adam said something to me. Something disgusting. Her expression shifted, but not in the way I'd hoped. There was no worry, no flicker of protectiveness, just irritation, as if I were inconveniencing her. "What are you talking about?" she said sharply. I felt like I was standing on a cliff's edge, teetering. "He offered me money," I said, my throat tight, $200,000, to sleep with him. Saying it out loud made me feel sick, like I'd swallowed something toxic. I waited for her to react, for shock or fury, for her to rush to my side. But instead, her face hardened, and she let out a short, bitter laugh, the sound sharp as glass. "Oh, for God's sake, Michelle, don't be ridiculous." I stared at her, disbelief numbing my mind. "I'm not lying," I said, my voice gaining volume, desperate for her to hear me. He said it. Just a little while ago, in the hallway. She was already shaking her head, her lips drawn back in a sneer. "You're unbelievable," she spat. I should have expected this. Always looking for attention, always stirring up drama when things aren't about you. It was like being doused in cold water. My own mother, dismissing me so easily, as if I was just some bored teenager making up stories. I felt tears building, burning my eyes, but I forced them back down. I would not break in front of her. "I'm not lying," I said again, louder, my voice cracking under the strain. She lifted her hand, silencing me with a single gesture, her face a mask of cold authority. "That's enough, Michelle. Let's see what Adam has to say about this." She strode into the living room, and I trailed after her, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Adam looked up, his mask of innocence firmly in place, as if he hadn't heard a word but had been waiting for this moment all along. "Adam!" my mom snapped, her voice sharp and accusing. "Michelle just told me you said something completely inappropriate to her. She's claiming you offered her money for—" She hesitated, shooting me a glare, too embarrassed to finish the sentence. Adam sat up a little straighter, his face arranged in a perfect imitation of shock and wounded pride. "Julia, I don't even know what to say. That's the exact opposite of what happened." He shook his head, sighing like he was the wronged party. She came out of the bathroom in just a towel, and honestly, it felt like she was trying to get my attention. I didn't want to say anything and upset you, but now she's twisting it around. He looked at me, his eyes full of manufactured pity, and I felt a wave of anger so sharp it made me dizzy. "What?" I shouted, my voice breaking as I stepped forward. "That's not what happened, and you know it." "You're lying." Adam kept up his act, holding up his hands as if to ward off an attack. "I swear, Julia, I was just going to let it go. I didn't want to cause any trouble, but I can't just sit here and let her accuse me of something like that." His voice was calm, steady, almost reasonable. The contrast between his composure and my desperation made me feel like I was losing my mind. I turned to my mother, pleading with her to see what was happening. But she barely glanced at Adam. Her glare was reserved for me. She didn't speak right away, but her silence was crushing. It was written all over her face. She believed him. She always did. It didn't matter what I said, how much I begged her to listen. In her eyes, I was the problem. "Unbelievable," she muttered finally, shaking her head. "You come into my house and this is how you behave? How dare you, Michelle?" Her words hit like a slap, each one stripping away another layer of hope. My face flushed with heat. My hands clenched so tight my knuckles ached. "You're really taking his side?" I shouted, my voice hoarse. "He's lying, Mom. He's lying to your face and you just—" She cut me off, her voice suddenly soft as she turned to Adam, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I'm so sorry you had to deal with this, Adam. I truly am." That was the final blow. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My mother, the person who was supposed to protect me, was comforting him. Not me, not even for a second. I grabbed my bag, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. "You know what? Forget it," I choked out, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. "Believe whatever you want. I'm done trying to make you see." I didn't wait for her to respond. I stumbled toward the door, vision swimming with tears I couldn't hold back any longer. Each step felt heavier than the last. The house that was supposed to be my safe place suddenly colder, smaller, like it was pushing me out. Behind me, my mother's voice faded into the background, muffled and meaningless. I stepped out into the night, the door closing behind me with a final echoing click that told me the truth I'd been avoiding all along. I was on my own. I could barely breathe. Betrayal and anger pressed so hard on my chest. It felt like I might collapse right there in the hallway. My hand shook as I reached for the front door, desperate to get out of that house, to put some space between me and everything that had just happened. I was almost there, my escape within reach, when her voice sliced through the thick, tense air behind me. Cold, sharp, and unforgiving. I didn't expect much from you, Michelle, but I never thought you were a... She stopped herself, the accusation hanging between us, incomplete but heavy as a stone. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance, my fingers white-knuckled on the door handle. "Don't you dare," I managed, my voice trembling despite my effort to sound strong. My eyes burned, but I wouldn't let myself look away. All the pain and betrayal churned inside me, threatening to break through. "You want to believe him? Fine, but don't you ever call me that. Not ever." She stood there, arms crossed so tightly her knuckles blanched, her face set in a mask of cold anger. For one awful moment, I thought she might actually spit that last word at me, but she didn't. Instead, she just turned her back, dismissing me, like I was nothing more than a problem she was tired of dealing with. That was it. I yanked open the door and stumbled outside, slamming it behind me so hard the glass rattled. I could feel tears stinging at the corners of my eyes, but I gritted my teeth and refused to let them fall. Not in front of her, not in front of Adam, lurking like a poison in the background. Not for anyone in that house who'd let me down. I practically ran to my car, throwing my bag into the passenger seat with a force that startled me. Climbing in, I gripped the steering wheel until my hands ached, as if I could anchor myself with sheer force. I started the engine and backed out of the driveway, not caring where I was going, just knowing I couldn't stay there another second. The streets blurred past, the world outside smeared by the tears I couldn't stop. Anger twisted inside me, tangled with humiliation and a grief so raw I could barely breathe. I drove for what felt like hours, the city lights flickering past, my mind racing through everything that had just happened. The betrayal was so complete, so unexpected it was hard to even process. My mother's face stone cold, Adam's smugness, the way he twisted everything to make himself the victim, and the way I'd been left to defend myself, alone. Eventually, I couldn't drive anymore. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the wheel. I pulled over on a quiet street, parked beneath a flickering street lamp, and just let it all crash down on me. My shoulders shook as I sobbed, the sound muffled in the dark interior of the car. I cried until I was empty, until there was nothing left but the ache in my chest and the question echoing in my mind. Why didn't she believe me? When the worst of it passed, I wiped my face with the back of my sleeve, struggling to catch my breath. The knot in my chest had loosened just enough for me to think. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, just to get the words out of me. But who? My mother was out of the question. She'd made that clear. And I couldn't trust anyone who might turn this into gossip, who'd whisper about me behind my back. My mind turned to John, just a friend but a good one. Someone I'd met at the community college where I worked, who always seemed to know when to crack a joke or when to just listen. We'd shared coffee and stories, talked about everything and nothing, and in all that time, he'd never made me feel less than or judged. He was the kind of person who made you feel like you could let your guard down. Still, I hesitated, embarrassed by everything that had happened. What if he thought I was overreacting? What if I was burdening him with something he didn't want to hear? But the alternative, keeping it bottled up, letting it fester, felt unbearable. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone and dialed his number, heart pounding as it rang. He answered after a few rings, his voice calm and familiar, grounding me in a way nothing else could. "Michelle, everything okay?" He didn't sound annoyed or impatient, just concerned. Somehow that was all it took. The tears started again, quietly this time. "John," I whispered, my voice rough and broken. I need to talk to someone. Can I just tell you what happened?" I steeled myself, bracing for judgment, but I didn't care anymore. I just needed someone to hear me, to believe me. John and I weren't anything more than friends back then. Just two people who'd found a kind of quiet comfort in each other's company. He was the sort of guy who could make you laugh when you needed it, or just sit with you in silence when words were too hard. We'd met in the campus break room, both of us tired from long days and drawn together by a shared sense of humor. Over months we'd become close, never romantic, just a deep, honest friendship. That's why, even though I felt so raw and exposed, I called him. He was one of the few people I trusted to hear me out, to listen without twisting things or making me feel smaller than I already did. As the phone rang, I worried I was dumping too much on him, but I had nowhere else to turn, and when he answered, I knew immediately I'd made the right choice. His voice was steady, a quiet anchor in the chaos of my thoughts. "Hey, Michelle," he said, gentle and patient. "What's going on? You sound upset." John suggested we meet at the park nearby. Maybe he knew that getting out, seeing someone face to face, would help me find my footing again. I agreed, still shaky but grateful for the lifeline. I drove over, my hands trembling on the wheel, my mind replaying everything I wanted to say, and everything I feared he'd think. When I arrived, I spotted him waiting under a big oak tree, his figure familiar and reassuring in the fading light. He stood as I approached, worry etched on his face. The usual easygoing smile was gone, replaced by a quiet concern that made me want to cry all over again. "Hey," he said softly, searching my face for answers. "You okay?" I shook my head, biting my lip to keep from breaking down again. For a moment, we just sat on the bench, staring at the ground, the silence stretching between us. Finally, I drew a shaky breath and told him everything. Adam's disgusting offer, the way my mother had refused to believe me, had turned her suspicion and anger on me instead of on him. The words poured out, a flood of anger and humiliation and relief all tangled together. I barely paused for breath, desperate to finally be heard. When I finished, I looked at John, bracing myself for that familiar look of doubt, the one I'd seen on my mother's face. But John was different. His jaw was set, eyes dark with anger, not at me, but at Adam, at the injustice of it all. "Michelle," he said, voice steady and sure, "I believe you. Every word." Hearing those words was like a dam breaking. For the first time all night, I felt the ground settle beneath me, just a little. I let out a shaky breath, tears welling up again. But these felt different. Less like defeat, more like relief. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice so small I barely recognized it. He shook his head, his own anger simmering just beneath the surface. "You shouldn't have to deal with this, Michelle. What he did, it's unforgivable. And your mom? She should have had your back, no matter what." His words soothed something deep inside me, a balm on wounds that felt impossibly raw. For the first time all day, I didn't feel entirely alone. Sitting there on that park bench, the streetlights flickering overhead, and the night air cool on my skin, I realized how much it mattered to be believed. Not pitied, not doubted, just believed. For the first time, I started to think I might get through this, one step at a time, so long as I had someone willing to stand beside me. I didn't feel totally alone, not really. Even when the silence pressed in, there was a strange comfort in just having someone nearby who was willing to listen. I took a shaky breath, trying to pull myself together, but before I could help it, everything just started to pour out of me. Words I hadn't let myself say in years, memories I'd kept locked up tight. "You know, it's not just this," I managed, my voice trembling. "My mom, she's always been cold with me. Ever since Lily." My throat closed up, and I had to force the words out. "Ever since my sister died." The memory hit me like a punch to the gut, vivid and sudden. I was 7 again, small and scared on the edge of the playground, watching Lily's blonde ponytail bounce as she chased a ball. I could see the way the sun glinted off her hair, the way her laughter filled the air. Then, the ball rolling too far, Lily darting after it, the street looming. The screech of car tires, the blur of panicked faces, people shouting. I could still feel my own scream stuck in my chest, powerless to stop what was coming. All these years later, the guilt and grief still felt fresh, as if no time had passed at all. J.N. just listened, sitting quietly at my side, not pushing, not judging. He didn't try to fill the silence or fix anything. That meant more than I could say. "It was an accident," I said, the words scraping out of me, rough and raw. But it's like my mom never saw it that way. After that day, everything changed. She stopped looking at me the same, stopped hugging me, stopped wanting to be around me. She just shut me out. I think deep down she's always blamed me for losing Lily. Maybe I blame myself, too. My voice cracked and I felt tears sliding hot down my cheeks. And I wiped them away quickly, embarrassed by how much I was unraveling. The next few days blurred into each other, every hour thick with anger and hurt. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Adam's smug face, the way he twisted everything around so I looked like the bad guy. My mom didn't even hesitate to defend him. That stung more than I expected, deeper than I wanted to admit. It felt like she was siding with him against me, just like she'd chosen to turn away from me all those years ago. I kept replaying it. Her cold voice, her accusing eyes, the way she believed him without question. It was like being 7 again. Only this time I wasn't just losing her love. I was losing my own sense of what was right and true. But as I lay awake at night, the anger started to harden into resolve. I couldn't let Adam get away with what he'd done. Not just for me, but because I needed to prove, to myself and to my mom, that I wasn't the villain here. I needed undeniable proof. Something she couldn't explain away. Something that would force her to confront the truth about Adam. That idea took root in my mind and grew until it was all I could think about. My phone. I always had it on me. If I could get Adam to admit what he'd done, to even hint at it, I'd finally have something real. Evidence my mom couldn't ignore or twist. The plan made my heart hammer in my chest, but it was the only thing that made sense. I'd have to play along, make Adam think I was starting to believe him, that maybe I was ready to let things go. The thought turned my stomach, but I was determined. That evening, hands shaking, I dialed his number and forced my voice to sound uncertain. "Adam, I've been thinking about what happened," I said, letting my words waver. "Maybe we should meet somewhere quiet and talk. I feel like maybe we misunderstood each other." He hesitated, then answered, his voice as slick and patronizing as always. "Well, I'm glad you're being reasonable, Michelle. Where do you want to meet?" I kept my tone steady, told him about the park nearby, a place I knew would be empty at this hour, no one to interrupt us. He agreed without question, and when I hung up, I immediately opened the recorder app on my phone, rehearsing what I'd say, willing myself to keep my anger buried deep for just a little longer. This was my chance. I needed to get it right. As I waited on the park bench, the evening air felt heavy, every breath tight in my chest. My phone was hidden in my jacket pocket, the recording already started. I watched the path until I saw Adam walking toward me, every step radiating smug confidence. I stood up as he got close, forcing a small, uncertain smile. "Hey Adam, thanks for coming. I wanted to talk. I've been thinking about what happened, and I wanted to apologize if I misunderstood anything." He sat down beside me, that self-satisfied grin never leaving his face. "I appreciate that, Michelle. I knew you'd come around. Emotions get the better of us sometimes, you know?" He said it like he was granting me forgiveness, as if he hadn't twisted everything in the first place. I nodded, pretending to agree, trying to keep my nerves hidden. Yeah, maybe I overreacted. I was just shocked, I guess. Maybe I didn't handle things the right way. I glanced over, searching his face for any sign of doubt. I need to understand. What did you mean exactly when you said what you said about the money?" He hesitated for a second, then leaned in, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "Look," he said, "I only brought it up because I thought we had an understanding. You're smart, Michelle. Beautiful. I thought you'd see the opportunity for what it was." His words felt oily, and it took everything I had not to recoil. I swallowed hard, kept my voice even. "But $200,000. That's not a little thing, Adam. Why would you offer that to me? What did you expect in return?" He chuckled, shrugged like it was no big deal. "Wasn't expecting anything, really. Just testing the waters, you know? Figured you might be interested. You said you were having trouble with money. I thought it could help us both." The way he said it, so casual, like what he was suggesting was normal, made my skin crawl. But I pressed on. "Help us both, how exactly?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He smirked, leaning back on the bench like he owned the world. "Come on, Michelle. Don't play dumb. You know what I meant. I didn't think you'd blow it out of proportion. Nobody else had to know about it. Could have been just between us." I let the silence stretch, heart racing, hoping every word was being captured by my phone. "So you were serious about the $200,000? He looked at me, eyes cold and calculating. "Of course I was. I don't say things I don't mean, Michelle. It was a genuine offer. I thought you'd be smart enough to take it." His arrogance was suffocating, but it was exactly what I needed. For a moment, I let myself imagine what my mom would say when I played this back for her. How she'd finally be forced to see the truth, to see Adam as he really was, and maybe, just maybe, to see me differently too. I wasn't sure if it would fix everything between us, or if anything ever could. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. This was my chance to set things right, not just for myself, but for the sister I'd lost and the family I was still desperate to hold on to. I'd always assumed you'd catch on to what I was doing. It was all in the details, the careful way I sat, the measured tone of my voice, the way I let myself seem smaller than I was. Every time Adam spoke, every sly insinuation or loaded compliment, it sent a white-hot rush of anger through me. But I didn't let it show. I was in control, even when I felt like shaking. I had the recorder running, and that device was my anchor. It didn't matter if my insides were knotted up, because every word was being preserved. Another stone in the pile of evidence I was building. When Adam paused to catch his breath, I let the silence stretch, then looked him straight in the eye. My voice barely above a whisper, but perfectly steady. "Thanks for clearing that up, Adam. I needed to hear it from you." I forced a smile that barely reached my eyes, then dropped my gaze, fidgeting with my hands like I was embarrassed, playing my part to the hilt. "I mean, you're not wrong, Adam," I continued, letting my voice tremble a little. "I am struggling. Money's tight, and with all these student loans hanging over me, most days it feels like I'm underwater, just trying to keep my head up." I chanced to look at him, and there it was. This barely suppressed spark of excitement, like he thought he was about to win a prize. He leaned in, his posture shifting, as if proximity alone would seal the deal. "You don't have to feel bad about that," he said, his tone softening as if he suddenly cared about more than his own interests. It was all a performance, and I recognized each act. "You're a smart girl, Michelle. You've got potential, options you haven't even thought about. I'm offering you something real, something that could change your life. It's more than just the money, you know. It's about making things better for both of us. It's practical." I nodded, pretending to mull it over, giving him just enough doubt to keep him talking. "It's just, I don't know. I've never thought about anything like this before. I mean, it's not like you're unattractive or anything," I said, forcing out a laugh so awkward it almost hurt. I looked away, cheeks flushed, as if the admission embarrassed me. "You're actually pretty good-looking, Adam." His smile widened, a thin veneer of charm spreading across his face as he straightened his shoulders, confidence radiating from him now. "Well, thank you," he replied, his voice slick with self-assurance. "See? It doesn't have to be this weird, uncomfortable thing. I knew you'd understand if you just gave it some thought. This could work out for both of us, Michelle. You just have to let yourself see the possibilities." I gave him another uncertain glance, letting my hesitation linger. "Maybe you're right. I need some time to think," I said, rising slowly, as if weighed down by uncertainty. "Can I let you know in a couple days? I really need to figure out how I feel about all this." He didn't miss a beat. Of course," he said, his grin now stretching wide. "Take all the time you need. I'm glad we finally talked about this." I nodded, forced a brittle smile, and walked away, my phone still recording every word in my pocket. This time my trembling hands weren't from anxiety or fear. They were from anticipation. I had him, every slimy, manipulative word caught on tape, and I knew exactly how I was going to use it. 2 days later, I sat on my bed, phone in hand, nerves thrumming through me as I dialed Adam's number. My stomach lurched, but I reminded myself that this was for me, for all the times I'd been cornered or dismissed or made to feel small. The recorder was ready, and so was I. Adam answered on the first ring, his voice smooth and eager, like he'd been waiting for this all along. "Michelle," he said, drawing out my name, silkily confident. "I was hoping you'd call. Did you have time to think things over?" I let the silence stretch, just a heartbeat too long, to make him sweat. Then with a shaky sigh, I said, "Yeah, I've been thinking. I'm not ready to talk more, but I don't want anyone to walk in on us. I want to meet somewhere private, you know, somewhere out of the way." His excitement was unmistakable, layered under his practiced calm. "Of course. Just tell me where, and when. I'd already chosen the place, a hotel that was practically sacred ground to Adam and my mother, the kind of opulent spot that made them feel like royalty. "The Grand Regent," I said, my voice soft but decisive. "Let's meet in the lobby tonight, around 8. We can talk about the details there, in person." He didn't hesitate for a second. "Perfect. I'll see you tonight." As soon as the call ended, I slumped back against my headboard, breathing deep, trying to steady the adrenaline coursing through me. Every detail was falling into place. My phone was fully charged, the recorder app open and waiting, just one tap from capturing everything that mattered. Adam thought he was about to get exactly what he wanted. But tonight, I wasn't the one walking away with nothing. At 7:50 p.m., I called him again, injecting a note of apology and urgency into my voice. "Hey, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm running late. Why don't you go ahead and wait for me in a suite? I'll be there as soon as I can." He jumped at the suggestion, his eagerness barely hidden. "No problem, Michelle. I'll let the front desk know you're coming." As soon as I hung up, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to my mother's house. My grip on the steering wheel was so tight my hands ached, but I didn't let myself loosen up. Tonight was about more than just catching Adam. It was about making my mother see the truth, finally, without excuses or denial. She opened the door and her eyes narrowed immediately, suspicion coloring her tone. "What do you want?" she asked, arms crossed, voice sharp as broken glass. I didn't waste a second. "Mom, you're coming with me," I said, my voice low and unwavering. She tried to cut me off, to snap back with her usual blend of sarcasm and irritation, but I didn't let her. All the pain and resolve I'd been holding back came pouring out. "If you don't come with me right now, I swear you'll never see me again. No more calls, no more visits. This is your only chance. I'm not playing around." For the first time in years, she looked genuinely startled. There was a long, tense moment where she searched my face, weighing her options. And then, without another word, she grabbed her purse and followed me to the car. No arguments, no protests, just a silent admission that maybe this time she needed to listen. The drive to the hotel was a study in silence. My mother sat rigid in the passenger seat, her gaze fixed straight ahead, hands clenched in her lap. I watched the city lights blur by, the familiar skyline now a backdrop to something that felt momentous. The Grand Regent loomed ahead, all polished stone and gleaming windows, the kind of place that broadcasted success and privilege. Inside, the lobby was a world unto itself. Gleaming marble floors, the air perfumed with fresh flowers and expensive polish. I could almost feel Adam and my mother's shared pride in this place, their sense of belonging in such rarefied air. But tonight it was just another stage for the truth. I strode to the reception desk, my words crisp and clear. "Hi, someone's waiting for me, but I don't know the room number. He said to give you my name when I arrived." I told the receptionist my name, watched as she checked the computer, then called upstairs to confirm. "Yes, room 704, 7th floor," she said, handing me a key card. I turned to my mother and pressed the key into her hand. "Let's go," I said, my tone brooking no argument. She hesitated for just a moment, then nodded and followed me to the elevator, her face pale and unreadable. The ride up was thick with tension. I could hear my own heartbeat, feel the weight of everything we hadn't said pressing in on us. When the doors slid open, I led the way down the plushly carpeted hallway, pausing at room 704. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and slid the key card through the lock. The green light flashed, the lock clicked open, and I pushed the door wide, letting the truth come spilling in. I pushed the door open, the hinges creaking in the quiet afternoon. Adam sat sprawled in the armchair, legs crossed, his whole posture radiating an arrogance that always grated on me. He looked up lazily, expecting only me, and flashed that familiar, cocky grin until he saw my mom step in behind me. The smile evaporated. He jerked upright, shoulders tensing, as if the air had just shifted and he was the only one who noticed. "What's going on?" he snapped, voice tight. The swagger was gone, replaced by a brittle edge. His eyes darted between my mother and me, searching for some escape or explanation, his confidence already unraveling. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment press down on my chest, but I moved forward anyway, my mom a silent presence at my back. Adam's expression twisted, panic fighting with confusion. "What's going on, Michelle?" he demanded, trying to sound in control, but his voice trembled, betraying him. I could see the calculation in his eyes, the frantic attempt to regain the upper hand, to figure out what I had brought with me, besides my mother, besides the truth. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my knuckles white around it. My heart hammered, but my voice came out steady, colder than I felt inside. "I think it's time we cleared up that little misunderstanding, Adam," I said. "You remember, don't you? The conversation we had at the park 2 days ago?" He blinked fast, his gaze flickering between us. "Michelle, I don't know what you're talking about," he spat, but the bravado was gone. His panic was almost tangible. The smugness he wore like armor now shattered. "You're making a big mistake here." I pressed play. The room filled with his voice, chillingly clear. Every word he'd spoken at the park echoed off the walls. The crude offers, the oily excuses, the moment when he admitted, proudly, horribly, that he meant every word. My mom went still beside me, her face draining of color. She stood frozen, eyes wide, taking in the evidence she'd refused to believe before. When it ended, the silence was louder than his voice had been. I turned to my mom, and for once I didn't feel small. I fought to keep my voice from shaking. "That's the man you defended, the one you believed over me. So tell me, Mom, am I still the liar?" Adam's composure disintegrated. He started to sputter, his face flushed and desperate. "Julia, you know this is all twisted. She set me up." He was almost shouting now, words tumbling over each other. "You can't believe this. She's just trying to turn you against me." But my mom didn't even look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on mine, searching, scared. For a long moment, she just stared, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't make the words fit. Finally, her voice barely more than a whisper, she asked, "Is this real, Michelle?" On the drive home, the car was heavy with everything unsaid. My mom's hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, her eyes fixed on the road. We didn't speak, but something fundamental had shifted between us. A wall I'd been banging my fists against for years had finally cracked. A week later, Adam was gone. My mom filed for divorce, quietly, decisively. We never saw him again. It was as if the house exhaled, the air lighter without his presence. Even so, the silence he left behind was complicated, filled with old wounds and new uncertainty. In the weeks that followed, my mom and I started something we hadn't tried in years. We talked. Really talked. It was awkward, messy, and sometimes painful. She apologized, not just for not believing me, but for all the ways she'd failed to see me, for how she'd clung to the version of family she wanted instead of the one she had. We didn't fix everything with a handful of conversations, but we took the first steps. For the first time, I wasn't just a shadow in the house, the living ghost of the daughter she'd lost. I was myself, and she wanted to know me, to understand me. That was new. That was everything. Looking back, I can see how that night changed me. For so long, I'd let other people's doubts define me. Standing up to Adam, forcing the truth into the open was terrifying. But it also set me free. I found my voice that night, and with it, I reclaimed my place in my own life. My mom began to treat me differently, from a place of respect, not just obligation or guilt. We're not perfect, not even close, but we're building something real together, day by day. And through it all, John was there. He never once doubted me. In the darkest moments, when I questioned everything, he checked in, listened, and made sure I knew I wasn't alone. Our friendship deepened in those months, shifting quietly into something more. I realized how rare it was to have someone see you fully and stand by you, no matter what. By 30, we were married. Not the fairy tale wedding I once imagined, but an honest, joyful celebration of surviving and choosing each other. Now, years later, with Bobby and Emma laughing in the backyard, I sometimes catch myself marveling at how far I've come. Our home isn't perfect. There are still hard days, old hurts, and the work of healing, but it's filled with trust and laughter. My family is built on honesty, on choosing each other every day. I never thought I'd have this. A family that feels safe, a love that feels earned. Losing Adam and confronting the truth was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it gave me back my life. It gave me the chance to be more than the sum of my scars. If there's anything I've learned, it's that the truth can shatter, but it can also set you free. And sometimes, in the aftermath, you find the pieces of the life you always hoped for, stronger and more beautiful than you ever imagined.